Brian Michael Stoller was a longtime friend of Michael Jackson's and attended the memorial. Brian, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mary.
That moment that Paris stood on the stage and talked about her dad being the best dad ever since the time she was born, she said it. First of all, you know these children. Most of the rest of us, in fact, I would say the majority, never knew them when Michael was alive. I mean, he kept them hidden, literally.
He did.
And veiled, and so didn't expect her to talk, and then she did. Were you surprised that Paris talked?
I was surprised, but it was very much in character for her. She's a very courageous little girl, and very smart. Very, yeah. It surprised me, but it was very much in character for her.
You have talked to me in the past about what a great dad Michael Jackson was. Nobody really knew that side of him. That was the private side. Was this sort of that moment of vindication, that moment of confirmation?
Absolutely. I was very proud of her because I think it just showed the world, you know, she was brought up, how wonderfully she was brought up.
What about the kids and what happens next? When I watched them on the stage, there was a very strong connection to the Jackson family. They were holding tight to them, and it seemed very genuine, very real. That's
why I think the kids need to be with, you know, with Catherine, because it's not just Catherine, it's the whole Jackson family, and there's so many of them, you know, there. It would be, I think, ridiculous to take the kids anywhere else. And there may be actually a custody battle. We don't know at this point what's going to happen. Moments yesterday that stood out for you. I know there was a moment when Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown, talked about Michael Jackson, said, you know, King of Pop isn't enough for him. Right. Well, when it was said that he was the greatest entertainer in the world, the standing ovation lasted almost, it felt like an eternity, and he deserved it. And my heart just welled up at that point, because he really was and is still the greatest entertainer in the world. And it was interesting too to me that some of the speakers, including Reverend Al Sharpton, we just saw, they took on the critics yesterday. They used this as a moment to criticize the critics who have gone after Michael Jackson for some real controversial issues in his own life. When Al Sharpton said to the kids, you know, your daddy wasn't strange. What was strange was what he had to deal with. What was your reaction to that? I think he was exactly right. I mean, Michael was a victim, you know. He was, and he was just a perfect target, and everybody wanted to pick on him. So you never felt that any of it was justified? I knew Michael much differently than I think, you know, the world and the critics knew him, and he was very normal to me. And the last song, We Are the World, that also for you was a very moving moment, because it reminded you of something that happened at Neverland. Yes. Michael and I used to meet a lot in his library in the house up at Neverland, and he had a little glass globe of the world that was about the size of a baseball, and one day he picked it up and he held it in his hand and he smiled, and he said he liked holding the world in his hand. And yesterday during the ceremony, I just thought to myself, he had the whole world in his hands yesterday. Did it bring you peace, the ceremony? A little bit, but it's still very surreal, and it's still going to take some time to let it sink in. Brian, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Mary.